we are constantly thinking about how we can better meet the mental health needs of our students. One of the hardest things to accept when you join the school board and you really get into the nitty-gritty of the budget is there's a very small portion of the budget that we actually have a lot of leeway with. The majority, the bulk of our budget, like 75 to 85% of it, is fixed as it should be on people costs via negotiations with staff. So there's a very small what's left over that we can maybe tinker with a little bit, but it's very small. That being said, I know we've been looking into seeing if there's a program being offered through LA County, and I'm forgetting the name of it right now, but it adds another layer of mental health support where students can access a mental health therapist remotely. And so it will not displace anything we're already doing, it just adds yet another way to access mental health services, and we're still trying to figure out how that would work in terms of keeping our parents engaged, making it accessible for the students. So that's something that we have been, Ed Services is looking into. The other thing that has come up is last year the district moved forward with supporting and encouraging everyone in the community at all levels to get BLS certified, so being able to administer basic life support. And another idea that's come up is what if we can do the same thing in terms of allowing our staff, teachers, and community to access the youth mental health first aid course. It's a very short course, and that would also increase the number of adults in our community, teachers, staff, and parents that are able to identify when a student's in crisis and know where to refer them to. So we're doing what we can. We need the community's help. So if you know of a resource that we could tap into, please feel free to share it with us. Okay, thank you.
There's a lot of misinformation about how the state funds the Palos Verdes School District. And so I'm the former chair of the Assembly Budget Subcommittee on Education Funding, and I want to make sure that everyone has the facts straight. In 2013, the legislature and the governor signed the biggest change in how schools in California are funded, and that was called the local control funding formula. The basic idea of the local control funding formula is that districts that have the highest percentage of students in one of the three categories, low income, English language learners, or foster kids, that those districts with the highest percentage of students in those three categories get what's called a supplemental grant. So everyone gets the same base grant. That's why it's called the base. The base is the same for every school district in the state of California. For every additional student in one of those three categories, you get what's called a supplemental grant. If you have more than 55% of students in your district that are in any one of those three categories, then you get an additional grant, which is called a concentration grant. A concentration of disadvantage is basically how you can think about it. The reason why Palos Verdes gets less funding than not only neighboring Los Angeles Unified, but even neighboring Torrance Unified, is because we have the privilege of living in one of the nicest communities in the state of California in terms of income, in terms of the number of foster kids, the only reason why Palos Verdes has, I believe it's about 18% students in one of those three categories, is because of our immigrant students. We have a higher, we have more English language learners. And so we have very few, we do have some low-income students, but we have much lower low-income students in Palos Verdes than in Los Angeles Unified. Just to give you perspective, in Los Angeles Unified, 90% of students fall into one of those three categories: low-income, foster kids, or English language learners. I believe in Palos Verdes Unified, it was less than 20, but more than 15, I believe. And so that's the reason why Palos Verdes Unified gets less money. Now, if you're not happy with that, Dr. Coleman talks about school choice. You can choose to go to Torrance Unified, which has a 40% students in those populations, or you can go to LA Unified, which is 90%. But I think many of us live in Palos Verdes because we know that not only is there a smaller percent, because we have such high socioeconomics in the state of California, and study after study shows that across the country, the highest performing public schools are strongly correlated with the socioeconomic demographics of the families that make up that school district. But I just wanted to give that basic primer in terms of how California school funding works. And to make up those differences, that's where the Peninsula Education Foundation is so critical. But if PEF raises about $2 million a year, and your general fund every year is 22 million. 22 million, yeah. So that's just to give you a perspective in terms of, while we love the Peninsula Education Foundation, my family, we always, give the recommended amount, to support the foundation. But by and large, the bulk of the funding for the state of California, ever since Proposition 13 passed, which is another story, California used to be in the top 10 in the nation in per pupil funding until Proposition 13 passed in 1978. Ever since then, we've been trying to get back. But as Dr. Coleman said, in the last 10 years, we were close to the bottom. We've made progress. We're slightly above the national average in per pupil spending at this point, but we still have a long ways to go. Just real quickly on those two bills. So the first bill basically is calling for the state of California to have a master plan to deal with climate readiness, climate preparedness. And it's not just about electrifying our schools, but it's also about addressing critical issues like extreme heat.
Right.
Like, for example, the San Fernando Valley. I mean, they
Air conditioning.
Yeah, well, talk about the need for air conditioning. Yeah. I mean, they have measured ground temperatures in sections of their schools, especially where there's a lot of asphalt, over 120 degrees. And so yeah, and clearly with the realities of climate change becoming increasingly urgent, we need to have plans to address those realities of the climate crisis. The second bill you mentioned is the bill that was addressing the problem of teachers and school employees being attacked, as part of the culture wars, and so that bill made it a misdemeanor to be attacking. We clearly want to protect our teachers and school employees, from being attacked in any way. One last bill I just wanted to add, and it goes directly to one of the most important issues that Palos Verdes Unified, students as well as the larger community is facing, is the condition of our schools or our school facilities. Mm-hmm. School districts throughout the state they meet their facilities needs not through the general fund dollars, but through bond measures. But the way it works is that the local school district needs to pass a bond, and then the state can provide matching funds. But it's, depending again on your socioeconomics, it can range from about 50-50 to about 60-40, with 60 coming from the state and 40% coming from locals. That is primarily for low-income school districts. But the fundamental problem is that Palos Verdes, has not supported a local school bond. I thought I saw Lorraine Beckman here.
She's online, and we're going to have her talk right after you.
Yeah, okay. But we need to pass a local school bond. Our school facilities are decrepit. When our Palos Verdes high school students came, when I met with them last year, they talked about their biggest concern was the decrepit condition of their high school bathrooms. and I had an opportunity to visit them with some parents. And the parents told me, "Oh, this looks exactly like what it did back in the 1960s." You know? And so basically, it hasn't been improved since the 1960s or the 1970s. We need our kids deserve better, not only for basic facilities like our bathrooms, but making sure that our schools, our classrooms have 21st century educational technology, so that they are not disadvantaged. That we're investing in our kids and providing them the same quality educational facilities as other school districts provide.
So I did support the last school bond. I'm just speaking as a resident of Rancho Palos Verdes. Clearly, most likely, there needs to be a bond measure in our future. I think from my own personal experience up close with that last bond measure and now having a better understanding of school finance and facilities financing, I am hopeful that we'll put together a bond package in communication and collaboration with the community, and that it'll be much more defined and targeted in terms of priorities of our facilities. Because I think when we think about our most urgent needs, toilets back up all the time, so prioritizing plumbing. HVAC, we have medically fragile students in classrooms that were built in the 50s, so they do not have air conditioning, and that's a really high concern for us. So plumbing, HVAC, a lot of our sites we can't, even if somebody gave us air conditioning, they don't have the electrical capacity to support air conditioning. So I think I'm hopeful that we will be able to work as a team with all of you. It's going to take everybody in the community, whether you have kids in the district or not, to put together a ballot measure that we can all pass together. But I'm hopeful we're going to make it happen. We've only failed one bond measure in this community, and that gets forgotten sometimes.
A couple things.
Two quick things. I hope that reasonable parents will always give those who we don't agree with some respect, because I was at the meeting that was just referenced, and there are a lot of people for religious reasons don't want certain things read to their children, that's all. But I wanted to talk to Mr. Muratsuchi regarding all these high-density housing bills that are getting passed. And I have to thank him for not voting for them. And we should all appreciate that, because it is very important that he represents us in the community. The problem I have right now is I was at the PVPUSD State's Town Hall meeting Tuesday night, and people
So Joan, this is Joan, this is about
Yes.
schools, so we're not going to do.
I'm right, I'm
housing
getting
today.
there. That's why.
Okay, so ask your question on schools.
All right, well, it pertains to Palos Verdes Estates, has CCNRs, but someone wants to use our school land, a real estate developer, to meet the high-density housing, and specifically Malaga Cove. So, I would like to, could you give a few minutes of a discussion or give us your thoughts on if cities cannot reach the goals set out, are they going, this government, state government going to say, well, you've got a lot of school land out there, we're going to just take it? Because the new Senate bill that passed is talking about by right. And is it by right then that the state can say you have to use your school land? Because I would like that to
Okay, so
never
we have
happen.
the question, so we'll let Muratsuchi answer it.
I think he understands, because school
Okay,
land
so
is demand.
he's ready now to answer.
All right, thank you, Joan, for your question. So, as of now, the state laws, the rush of state laws that have been passed to try to address the affordable housing crisis by building more housing everywhere, anywhere, whether we like it or not, is still respecting local zoning. So if the Malaga Cove property is not zoned for residential, then you cannot build housing that is not zoned residential. However, every city is being increasingly challenged to identify more land to build more housing. And so I don't know what the Malaga Cove property is zoned for. I assume it's not zoned for residential. If it's not zoned for residential, as of today, you shouldn't have to worry about housing being built there. I'm sorry, I can't get more definitive because I'm not aware of any laws that would allow for housing to be built if it's not zoned residential. Following on our students and Sydney's lead, I want to say that I'm working on a bill to pass, to get on next year's November ballot a $14 billion statewide school construction bond measure so that we can provide matching funds to local school districts. But in order to get those state funds to local districts, we need to pass a local school bond here in Palos Verdes. I had the experience when I served on the Torrance School Board that we first failed to pass a school bond in 2006, and then in 2007 we came back and passed not one but two school bond measures, and since then the Torrance Unified School facilities have dramatically improved. It takes a community-wide effort. It's not just something that's going to be led by our school board and our school district, our superintendent. It takes a community to fix our schools, and I look forward to working with everyone to do that.